God, we say that. No, we've started recording now, but I'll say it anyway. We say that the video feeds in Alto are small, but see, I can't even see a thumbprint of your face.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, that's why.
Make it to another view. Yeah, so I've removed both of the screen grabs. Okay.
Can you hear that?
Yep.
Did you hear the plane?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's not so
We've
good.
got a
That's
rumble.
one thing about this apartment. Aye. Actually, I'm right under the flight path, as it turns out. But maybe Alto actually will do a decent job of removing it. We'll see.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah, hopefully. Okay. Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of the Creator Toolbox. This is the show all about the nuts and bolts behind your creator business. I'm Colin Gray from thepodcasthost.com. Joined by Jacob, as always. How are you getting on, Jacob?
I'm good. I'm good. It's been a crazy week. Got so many things to talk about, so I've been looking forward to it.
Cool. Yeah, I think you've been playing around with way too many tools, haven't you?
Way too many. Way too many. All for the podcast.
Cool. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Just for the podcast, not for your own fun at all.
Nope. Not even a little bit.
So yeah, I've got a couple of things I want to go into. I want to follow up with a couple of the things I mentioned. I've mentioned in a few episodes, I think, around maybe the productivity hacks, the little tools that I use that I couldn't live without, around shortcuts and things like that. But also a wee short that did quite well for me very recently that I want to dig into a wee bit as well around mice, of all things.
Yeah,
cool. What is it you're wanting to dig into?
I've been making some software with AI, and I've got a hot take on where we are at the moment with that. Because we've talked about that on the podcast before. I've tried to keep it to a minimum. I'm always playing with AI. I'm always trying to figure out what can we do now, what's improved, what's not. Kind of went dark for a bit, but yeah, I've got some cool updates, so we'll get to that. Okay,
perfect. Yeah, stuff you've been building. Okay, let's jump into it then. Right, so mice.
Yeah.
I hope. No, this is a really useful thing to talk to, I think. So bear with us if you're out there listening and you think it's about to talk about a mouse. This is something that actually I think is really quite underrated. I made a short recently just on YouTube, which was around, I randomly decided to unbox a mouse on screen on a short just for fun, just actually to play around with editing in the shorts because I'm playing around with the YouTube app. So it was just more to play around with that because I ordered a new mouse basically because I lost the old one. And I have these mice everywhere. So I have one mouse that I have had 6 versions of now. I've bought 6 of them, 6 of the exact same mice. Yeah, exactly. I found it probably about 3 years ago. That long? Yeah, probably about that. And it just absolutely stunned me, like no exaggeration, how much better this mouse was than any other mouse that I'd ever used.
Okay.
And I say that with the full knowledge that every other mouse I've ever used was basically a completely bog standard, like £10, £15 mouse that you get with a computer or at work, or you know what I mean? So
yeah, cheap Logitech kind of had some clicky buttons and a scroll wheel. That's it.
Microsoft mouse, whatever it is. And really the kind of bones of this topic is that we sit for 8 hours a day with our hands on a keyboard and a mouse, and they are the primary 100% way that we interact with our work these days. It's like the core to it, the one tool, like even more so than the computer, is how I make the computer work. To do all of my creative work, all of my normal just running the business, all of my play, like playing games, things like that on the computer, whatever it is, it's all through a mouse and keyboard. And I think so many people actually have still got just the bog standard £10 mouse and keyboard. And frankly, they're shit compared to like even spending £20 or £30 more. The experience is infinitely better. So first question, do you think about it at all? are you using the standard like Apple gear? Because you're an Apple user.
I actually don't really like Apple's gear, to be honest. I'm not a big fan, especially not their mouse. There's the meme of it, the way that it needs to charge. It needs to be on its back to charge. You can't use it. I mean, that's thing number one. That angers me, but I can get past that. But it's actually just and this might be kind of what you're getting to. It's the form factor of it and the way that it fits into your hands. And like if you're using that for hours and hours and hours, it's a cool looking mouse, but it's sharp around the edges. And it's actually really uncomfortable to hold. So I'm not a big fan. I don't have a mouse right now. I'm using a trackpad. But when I do use a mouse, I have I think it's actually the bigger non-portable version of the one that you're using. It's just nice. It fits nicely in the hands. I've got a couple of kind of macro buttons on it that I can do things with. I really appreciate having the backwards and forwards buttons on the thumb thing on mice. I like that. There was also, you could kind of press down with your thumb on the, where your thumb rests. You could press down there, and there was a sort of button underneath the plastic of it, and that would, on a Mac anyway, that would bring up the screen what shows you all of the windows you have open. And I found that really helpful. I'm sure you can map it to other things, but I never bothered. That's no mouse, but that's the one I like.
So I like the one I'm using. I'm using the Logitech MX Anywhere 2. And I found this because it was on sale during Black Friday, I think. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to try a better mouse. And it was like £70, £80, I think they are normally, but it was down to 40, I think, in the sale. So I thought, that seems like a bargain for a really good mouse. And I don't know what inspired me to do it, but I got it. And there's a few things with this. It's similar to you. I'll show it on screen if I can. But it's got those side buttons, like you mentioned. So if I cover my face, it should focus on that. So they can be programmed to do whatever you like, which, absolutely is really interesting. It's more, I think a big part of it is the software side of it. So the fact that it's super accurate, like it feels so much more pixel perfect accurate. And when you're playing around with a lot of creative stuff, like you're editing in Premiere or Audition, things like that, you are like trying to hone in on like one little frame. You're clicking on tiny little things on the timeline, all sorts of weird and wonderful stuff. It does make a difference if you can just find it and click on it really quickly. So the accuracy is a big thing, but the form factor, like you say, just the fact it's quite weighty, like it just feels quite weighty in your hand. So that makes it more accurate too, I think, because you actually feel like you're moving something with a bit more momentum, and therefore you can kind of make it a bit more, you can be a bit more precise with it. The thing that I love about it most, though, is actually the scroll wheel on the top. It's such a weird difference, but the scroll wheel is amazing. It's heavy, so it has momentum. So if you flick the scroll wheel, it keeps going. Like you flick it.
Mine was like that. It was good.
Was it?
Yeah.
And it sounds like such a silly little thing, but see when you're in like a big document or a long web page or something like that, I can scroll around it by just flicking once, and then it flies down and then it slowly stops. And it's like it's akin to using a tablet and click it, like touching the page and flicking. And you know how you can do that to scroll, and it has momentum. So it goes fast at first, but then it slows down as if it's a real thing that you've just flicked, and it slows down with friction. And obviously that's a really nice like feature on that, but you can do it with a scroll wheel as well, it seems, because this has the exact same feature. So that's one little thing. Which one? So were you on one of the Logitech ones as well, but one of the bigger ones? Because they have,
I think it was it was the MX Master something. So it was the same line. It'll be the same sort of approach, but it was just the it was actually one kind of version out of date, but I still really liked it. And it's just a bit bigger than that, and I think it had a few extra buttons on it and stuff like that. I've used the more portable ones, the smaller ones, but I find that my hand cramps up a little bit on smaller ones, more actually than using just the trackpad. Really? But I think it's something to do with just the kind of shell, the clamshell approach to using it. I like splaying my hand on a mouse. You know what I mean?
Well, it's funny actually, because I've got another mouse for my other hand. So something you might not know is I use two. So I use two mice all the time, because I've been a computer user since I was like 12 years old or younger even, which is like 30 odd years now. And therefore I've had various problems with my hands over the years, like RSI, issues like that, stuff like that. So at one point in my life, I switched to left-hand mousing for a little while to try and give my right hand a rest. And so nowadays I actually just always have two mice in front of me. I've always got one on the left, one on the right, and I just switch between them constantly. And it felt a bit weirdly awkward. It felt a bit weirdly awkward at first, but actually I find it a real hack, because it means that Well, for a start, it keeps me a bit healthier because I'm kind of splitting my time between my hands, and it keeps my posture a bit better too because I'm using both sides for that as well, like just the way you're holding your arms. But equally, it means that I can mouse and use my right hand on the keyboard as well as the other way around, which is left, because often you're doing Control C, Control V, copy paste, all that kind of stuff, and mousing at the same time. But sometimes you find actually it's easier with your right hand too. Or I'm doing something else over here, like with the Stream Deck, but I can still use my my mouse with my left hand, stuff like that. So it's kind of a health thing, but also actually it does come in quite handy sometimes with mousing as well.
I cannot wrap my head around that. I can't imagine. Moving, switching mouse between hands is one thing, but then being able to do the same with the keyboard.
Yeah. It's not the right hand keyboard. Yeah, it's just, you just kind of, once you start doing it, I think it just becomes a bit second nature. But I have found that one of the best things I've ever done. And it is a bit of an on-ramp, as in you take a few months of feeling quite awkward with your left hand, but it doesn't take too long. You get quite used to it quite quickly. But the other mouse is, as you're saying, it's kind of more splayed out hand. So I do use my right more than my left, certainly still. And the right one is an ergonomic, like hold your hand upwards a little bit. So it's like more your hand's on its side with the mouse as opposed to on top of it. And I find that a much more comfortable position when you're doing it like that. And it just, it works quite well.
That's pretty cool.
But this one's got a couple of those extra buttons, but nothing too fancy. It's got the scroll wheel on it's not as nice as the left-handed one. So I tend to use that one whenever I'm scrolling about a website. But the thing that goes with this mouse, it's not necessarily my first choice of mouse, but it works with my favorite keyboard ever as well, which is...
I remember seeing this in your office, and the first time I saw it, I was like, what? It's not as weird as the fully separate ones.
Yes, yeah. Now, this was another thing I initially started using because just arm issues, RSI, that kind of thing. But absolutely, I think it's just so much more comfy than an average straight on keyboard because you can splay your elbows out a bit more. So it's split. You can kind of point sideways almost, if that makes any sense. And also it has the feature, which I don't know why nobody else does. It's got a stand on the front so that it actually leans backwards. So the keyboard is angled backwards. Now, like normally when you buy a keyboard, where are the little feet that make it angle on a keyboard? Can you think?
The kind of back left and right corner.
Yeah, back, left and right. So it points it towards you. But that just makes you just angle your hands more like that, which is stupid because that's not the way you want to be. You kind of want your hands naturally angle forward. So the feet should be on the front. And with this keyboard, they are. The foot is on the front. So it angles backwards and it just makes your wrists so much more comfortable, puts them in a much more natural position. So
let no one say that Bill Gates doesn't have it anymore. That's a killer product right there.
It is. I've had 4 or 5 of these as well. Because I've just lost them and broke them over the years. So that's my boring mouse and keyboard story.
It's not that boring though, because you're bang on. It's things that we use all the time, and the fact that it's got health implications. The tool that you choose to use, as well as productivity. Productivity is maybe a little bit negligible. Extra buttons and flicky scroll wheels, they do help a bit, but even if it is just for the health issues. But all of that aside, you don't need to have a good reason to spend $40 on a tool you use every single day.
If you've almost every single minute. Well, that's it exactly. If you can afford it, but they're often. I mean that the Logitech, the MX Anywhere S, this mouse, £40, like I said, on special offer. A bit more expensive if you buy it normally, but so good, and it just feels better as well. Like you just kind of feel better with your work than using this plastic crappy little mouse that you probably got given by somebody with your laptop or your desktop or whatever. And worst of all, using your trackpad just now. How can you just use a trackpad, Jacob?
I don't need to pull out mouses and plug in dongles. It's not so bad. It does grate a little bit, but the new MacBooks have got nice big trackpads, which is better than the tiny wee ones at least. I can't do it. I take my mouse with me on the train or anything. Like this Logitech's a Bluetooth, so it doesn't need a dongle, which is nice. Just attaches. And it's got a cool little feature on the bottom. It's got a button, so you can connect it to 3 different computers. So I can press once to connect to this laptop. I press it the second time and it connects to my other laptop, and the third time it connects to
desktop.
I remember my mouse actually did have that, and I did use that. It's just been so long. Fair enough.
Final question. I did try once. I sometimes hear particularly kind of quite creative people, or sometimes quite nerdy people, quite nerdy people like us, like coders and stuff like that, using what are they called? Clicky clacky keyboards. The ones with the massive keys.
Mechanical keyboards.
That's what I'm striving for. Mechanical keyboards. I got one of them once. I got a Keychron keyboard because I thought maybe this is the way to, have the best keyboarding experience. I didn't like it. I thought it was like so hard to get used to. And I can type, I can touch type pretty fast and all that. But have you ever tried them?
I had one actually, Right. And I went to a shop to try a bunch of different ones that had them in stock, just to figure out, because there's all sorts of different keys you can get for it. What are they called? Switches, action. They're called. Yeah, exactly. And you get softer touch ones. It's about the noise and about how much pressure it takes. And there's all sorts of different combinations. And I think I settled on the brown one, which is quite loud, but it was like the perfect pressure. My partner wasn't happy about it at the time.
Why is it expensive?
No, it was just too loud, too loud to be sociable.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I find I really like. So the Sculpt keyboard here has got quite a nice action. There's a good kind of up and down. I think that makes a difference. It's the travel, I think, from up to down position. That's what people love about the mechanical keyboards, the fact that you can really feel when you've hit it, and it makes a really satisfying clunk. And some laptop keyboards are pretty bad that way. They don't give you much feedback when you're typing, and there's barely any movement from up to down. So it makes it hard to type well, fast, accurate. But the Sculpt here has got really good action on it, but it's much less hard to push, I should say.
It's a really soft touch, that one. It's nice.
Yeah, cool. Okay, that's it for keyboards and mice. But I totally encourage you, if you're out there, you're using just sort of basic stuff. If you can't afford it, not everyone's got the budget, obviously, but if you can, I'd recommend those two products. But even better, do what Jacob did there. Get to a local computer shop, try out a few different ones, because I've no doubt that a good mouse is a personal thing, like the one that you like best, the shape you like best, all of that kind of stuff probably makes quite a bit of difference. So give it a go though. Right, Jacob. So what have you been working on? What's all this gadget geekery and tooling?
So over the past couple of weeks, I have built about 50 different apps. For real.
50.
About 50, yeah. About 46 of them got binned. Just because. I'll explain why. But 4 of them are actual working apps that are useful to me. And one of them is actually anyone could use it. It's got you can log into it, you can make an account, you can save things, you can come back and get them. And I made all this with AI. And I'm always like I was saying, I'm always playing about with AI and trying to see what can we do. I get really excited about the idea of AI being able to code and being able to one day code itself. So you could make an assistant that could improve itself. That's, I'm pretty sure, how we get Skynet, but I'm sure there's gray area in the middle.
Yeah.
And in the past couple of weeks, there's been a few tools that I've been using, but there's been some big improvements as well in that world. I want to try and not get too technical, Colin, so I'm going to rely on you to cut me off and pull me out if I'm going too deep, okay? But let me tell you some of the things I've made. Simple apps, and I didn't really write any of the code. I think that anyone could sit down and maybe watch a 30-minute YouTube video and make an app for themselves. Maybe not to share with other people, maybe not to sell, but like a tool that solves a problem for you is actually useful. So some of the things I made an app called Daily Draft, which has I made it to force myself to write, and it was really just procrastination from writing. To be honest, that's why I started doing it, I think, deep down. But the idea was I wanted a little app that I could pop into. It's got a timer that I cannot change. And basically I've got 30 minutes every day and I have to write 500 words. And if I don't get it done in that time, it wipes that draft and I have to start again. And I have to do that every day.
Whoa,
otherwise Yeah, harsh, exactly. But it's kind of what I wanted, and it's quite fun, and it changes the way you write because you think a lot less about self-editing. That's my one gripe about written journaling and stuff like that, is it's still open to self-editing, which is not that helpful when you're doing it for purposes of mindfulness and like processing things and ideas, and that way voice is much better. That's why I like podcasting. But yeah, so if you miss a day, then all of the drafts get wiped. So there's got some cool, interesting, unique features in there that I couldn't really find in anything, and I didn't even like the amount of time I spent building this. Probably would have taken me longer to find something that fit the bill. Yeah. And the process for building it pretty much looked like this is probably this app was the first one that I did, and it was probably about 30 iterations on this one. So that's where a lot of those wasted apps went, and it was me figuring out, how do I actually get this to work? How do I get it to code for me without me really doing anything? And I used a tool called Replit. This is a developer tool, but this new feature that they've added in is as close that I've found that anyone could pop in and make a little bit of software. So all you need to do really is get a really, really clear idea of what it is, not in detail. I tried detail. I tried lots of detail. I tried like minute detail. I tried to suggest. I do have a bit of a technical background, so I tried to suggest we should use this technology, or we should use that type of code, or we should use that type of database. And that didn't work very well because it's only really comfortable with certain things. And that's what actually got me thinking, wow, this is actually, they've made this not for developers. They've made this for normal people. Or certainly like it's more useful to normal people right now than it is to developers. Because I bet if I asked one of our fantastic developers in the Altitude team to pop in and try and make something, they would get frustrated as hell because it's not, because they know how to do it. Do you know what I mean? They know what tech it should be using. They know this way is better, that way is better. But if you fight with it, it doesn't work. So what I ended up doing to get this to work, on you go. Sorry.
I was gonna say, I've got a few questions about it. And I'll finish off what you're doing, and we'll show people. I'll pop it on stage as well. So I've got your app here, so we can show people. That's actually not it too. But that's not the one you were going to.
That's not the one. No, I'm just using this one as an example because it's the first one that I spent loads of time on. But this one I made today for this podcast. Like I spent an hour on it, maybe max, and that was all mostly doing it in the background. I made a few other things. I made a voice journal. I made a pronunciation coach. Like lots of different types of things that the pronunciation coach wasn't actually useful to anyone really. It was me just trying to figure out how to use a certain type of technology. But so I came to this one.
I felt like that was just making that friend that you have that is pedantic and annoying, but doesn't annoy you quite enough to get rid of. But every time you say something wrong, they're like, "No, actually, it's said like this." I was like, it just looked like the most horrible idea.
I know. But do you know why I started doing it? It was actually going to be a prank, and it still probably will be a prank. I was going to send it to my pal and ask him to do it. And it's funny in a Scottish accent because it's not forgiven at all. And I was going to, so it records as you say the word out loud, and it kind of fills in the words and makes it green or red depending on whether you pronounce it right. And it's just based on, can the transcript understand you? So I was going to send this to a few friends and take the voice recordings and then clone the voice and have it read an obscene message at the end back in their own voice. It was going to be funny. It's still going to be funny. I'll update you. Anyway, I made this app for today just to show off what you could do in about an hour once you've got the hang of it. And it just kind of blew me away, to be honest. So one of the things that I'm working on at the moment is partnership meetings. I'm meeting a lot of people that have previously been on our affiliate program, and anyway, I won't go too deep into that. Lots of meetings, lots of actions, lots of ideas and suggestions, and lots of things to process. So for all of these meetings, I was recording them. I'd say at the start of the meeting, I'd record this, and I'd flip it on in Google Meet, and out the other end, I'd just get an MP4 and I'd get a transcript. So I had like a backlog of about 4 or 5 that I had to get done this morning. And I mean, I knew fine well I could just sit out and bang them out. But I was like, I could prepare something for the podcast. That would be more fun and make a wee app around it. So I'll show you how it works. It's really simple. I just told it what I want this to do, and I did it in stages. I said, I want to be able to upload. Maybe I can actually show you. I would need to. I would need to change the screen that I'm sharing, to be honest. It's just imagine
we can pause and edit, and you do that. Would it be more useful?
Yeah, I think so. It'd be cool just to show the process.
Okay, yeah. I'll shout an edit point.
Here. Okay.
Edit point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Okay. Got me?
Yep.
Okay. So
hold on. Sorry. Let me just put it on stage. Okay.
So this is Replit. And this is Replit Agent in particular. Now, like I said, this is a developer app, so all this stuff in here, don't even look at that. Don't worry about it. You don't need to touch it, because I didn't for any of this. So earlier on today, I popped into Replit Agent, and let me get right to the top of the chat. But you can kind of see as I'm scrolling through here, the only thing that I had to do to build this was chat.
Yeah,
and this is how it started.
Conversation, yeah.
That's it. Build me a simple application powered by the new Claude model. You wouldn't need to say that, don't worry. Which takes a transcript from a partnership meeting and turns it into notes I can send to the partner I was meeting. It should summarize the main points, create actions, create next steps, and log ideas, problems, and suggestions. For audio listeners, just to be inclusive, on the screen at the moment, it's just there's a chat on the right hand side, and on the left hand side, it's to show me a preview of the app. And then the agent replies. It says, "Yep, no worries," and it makes a plan. And this is how it works. It will make, in this case, I think it started off with like a 5-point plan, and it will break down the project into these parts, and it will do one by one by one. And you can always go back to a previous point if it all mucks up. There's some gotchas in here, and I'm not going to go into exactly what you need to do to avoid the kind of pitfalls of it. I'll maybe save that for an article or a YouTube video or something. But there is a way to do this where you don't touch any code. So it builds the initial prototype, and I don't have the initial prototype here. This is a finished one, but it was first time working, and it came up with, it still had the ability to choose a file or upload a file. We could paste in a transcript, and then there was just this process transcript button, and then below that, it will pull out all of this information. So let me just show you how it works.
So while you're doing that, I played around with this a couple of weeks ago as well, and I built a little tool that I'd been thinking about for Alitu, like a new feature. And I start chatting with it. I gave it a couple of things. I found a few little gotchas as well, as in I said, right, I want you to build this thing that does this basic functionality. And it said, okay, let's build it. Shall we add in this, this, and this? Because they sound like good ideas. And I was like, oh yeah, they are good ideas. Let's add in those. And then actually that totally caused a problem, because it ended up creating the first version, the basic thing, but then it couldn't improve that without building all the other things on. Like, it couldn't kind of revisit the initial one and improve that. It was determined to go on and build the next feature instead. And I couldn't figure out how to get it to not do that. So I think what I should have done is just keep it really simple, build one component at a time. And then when I wanted to add extra features, then fine, I can say, right, okay, we're finished with this. Let's move on to this next thing instead.
100%. Yeah. And what you can actually do is once you finish that initial list, you can add things on. That's what I figured out a little bit too late. Was I would get this list, and it's kind of a case of, if it sounds too good to be true, if it says it's going to integrate with the sun and turn it on and off, it's not going to work. Do you know what I mean? When it comes back, comes back some really cool ideas, and it's a bit of a hit and miss as to whether or not they'll work. Some of them I've been really impressed by, but that is knowing how to go back and change it, or jump into the code to fix it, or say this is the problem and this is how you need to fix it. But if you just stick to like the initial prototype and maybe one or two basic features that it suggests to add, it'll do it almost every time. And do you know what's crazy? I've been using this properly for 2 weeks, but I think signed up to it about a month ago, and I tried a few things, and it was really early, like it was just out days, and it was just so buggy. But so over about a month total, the thing has completely changed.
Really,
You know, right at the beginning,
so
it couldn't even do that basic stuff. Yeah, exactly. So it's always been updated. I mean, and like for real, really, Colin, I spent, it took about an hour to do this, but of my time, I probably spent about 15 minutes doing this.
Yeah.
And so we'll have a quick look. I'll show you what it actually does.
Okay.
Yeah. So I uploaded a transcript. It's just a dummy one. I've processed it. And it's pulled out all of these different things, which I actually do need to go into the email.
Summary, ideas generated, action items, problems identified. Yeah. So it's summarizing everything in the document. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, right, cool. But then I actually need to kind of create an email with this. So I added, I didn't add, I just said, can we add a generate email feature? Somewhere down in this chat, I won't search for it. And it did. So we added a button to generate an email. I said, can we change the tone? And it did that. And I now got a drop down to change the tone. We'll make it friendly. I can put an additional guidance here. So actually one of the things I did was I made a little template to use just to demo this. So I'm going to paste my template into here. And we're going to regenerate it because I just generated this one off the original. It'll take a little minute. And then I'll make an email that I can actually kind of use. Did it? Maybe it didn't work.
So this is my question with it. This is where I got to with it. That word kinda. I think it is amazing. And I think this is going to change so much. And we can use this for real life use cases. The place I got to was I ended up with this prototype where I could show people what I was thinking about building, how it might work, but it definitely wasn't production ready. Like there's no way we could actually just get people signing up to it.
No.
So it still needed intervention from an actual developer towards the end. And even with things like when you're generating stuff like this, like you're still having to give a fair bit of oversight still, aren't you? But I mean, that's just AI in general at the moment. If we're concentrating on the Replit side of things though, I think you're right. I think the thing that I thought it would be super useful, so that was one, it's building a prototype. Like I think people are going to save so much money and time on wasted software projects, wasted websites, wasted all these things where you try and outline a project, you send it off to an agency, and then the agency doesn't actually quite understand what you're asking because it's very hard actually to describe exactly what functionality you are trying to create. It's why prototyping is such an important thing in the software development project process. But being able to actually create a kind of a working prototype in software, in code, that you can then show to a development agency and say, right, create me a real one of these. I think that is the kind of thing that's going to save so much time and money with a lot of people.
Couldn't agree more. But like, I want to push back on that a little bit. I agree in premise, but I think that this is ready now for people to build tools for themselves.
Oh yeah, sorry. So second side, yeah. If you're not wanting other people to use it, yeah, definitely. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, no, but that's it. There's not, the average Joe couldn't jump in here and make an app that someone else could use because it does make too many mistakes. Replit's only one tool as well. I want to show this one because I think I could sit down with almost anyone for not almost anyone, let's maybe qualify that a little bit. Someone who isn't scared of computers or tech, but doesn't have to be necessarily super technical. I could sit down with someone for 30, 40 minutes, tell them these are the things I learned, and sit with them while they tippy-tappy and saying, it's going to make a mistake there, say this instead. And they could make it, So that's available now. Replit's not really designed for people to use, so or for non-developers to use. So it needs that little bit of extra education with it, and that's not their focus. But I think it's nuts. Like you and I we could come up with an idea right now, and we won't actually do this, but we could, if we wanted to make something and if we give it an hour, we could make a prototype for almost anything and just prove a concept.
It's very cool. Yeah,
nuts. Yeah,
I think Replit was the one that made it much more clear to me that that we're going to be able to make production ready apps in, I don't know, whatever time, with the deployment side of it. That was always the part that was impossible to me. You can get Claude, you can get ChatGPT to help you code something, but then you still need to actually stand up the server and then deploy all the code to the server and make it all work with like the authentication and all that kind of stuff. Like there's all the actual implementation side of it that hasn't existed before, or maybe it has, but I just haven't seen it. But Replit was the first place I saw that actually was just, there's a deploy button. You can actually just stand up the server and just have people see it straight away. So yeah, it's really cool.
You can share a link, you can add your own domain to it and share that out. And the cool thing is, if there's any issues with that deployment, the agent can help you. Or so that's the agent on the side there, but there's another totally separate AI thing, which will just look at particular files you give it, and it's a little bit more old-fashioned, but it's actually, it can be really good for if you're stuck on something, you can kind of solve it with that and unmuddy the agent. Anyway, it's nuts. The deploy thing is what makes Replit really powerful, I think. I haven't deployed this, but I could. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's cool. Cool.
It's for building your own stuff. I totally agree. It's so good for that. And it kind of, I built a tool for our academy just recently, an accountability tool to use with our members to help people stay accountable, log like episodes, all that kind of stuff. And I feel like now I should have built it in this to actually create. I built it with Airtable at the time because Airtable is actually a really good no-code type tool, but it still has limitations because you have to run it on their platform, being able to embed it in somewhere, all that kind of stuff. It's kind of tricky, but I could probably just build it straight up with Replit now. And it would be just about good enough for something like we use with our members, because it doesn't need to be like signed up for by strangers. I could have like one overall password for everyone or something like that. Or although people can create accounts in this, to be fair as well, can't they? Like it's actually quite easy to set up authentication. So it's nuts.
It'll make it'll code its own authentication, or Replit's got its own kind of solution for that as well. I've not actually tried it, but the Daily Draft app that I made that with authentication. That'll take me a little bit longer. I spent a weekend on that, on the final version of it, once I figured out how to make it. But like you could go sign up, make an account, and use it in the exact same way I do. And all the user accounts are separate. You don't see anyone else's drafts, obviously. It's probably not secure. It would probably take a developer 5 seconds to hack it. So in that sense, this is what I mean. It's ready for tools that are for you to use, or for fun little things that don't need lots of security. But that's the one thing to keep in mind, is the security aspect to it. Like, and even deploying from these agents is a little bit risky, because there's secret keys that you need to use to access these AI APIs. I'm trying to say this in a way that's not super technical, but there's these secret keys that you should never share that give you access to the AI, so you can use that in your app, and those can be really easily shared, and someone can find it and then use it and spend all your budget on that. That happens a lot. So that's one thing. There's all sorts of gotchas, but like for Replit, like I can just log into my Replit and use this, and it's not available to anyone else. But I mean, this is a month of progress. That's the crazy thing, and that part of stuff isn't so much about the underlying AI technology. It's just about their implementation. So that can continue to improve pretty rapidly for months from now, Sorry, I'm really excited about this.
No, it will be. We'll no doubt cover some more stuff that we're building on this in future. But I think that's it's good coverage of it for now. Worth having a wee play with if you're. I think there's a free trial on it. I remember had a few limitations, but if you can get your hands on it and just play around with one little idea that you have, it's worth having a look. Cool. Okay.
Take an afternoon.
Right.
That was a lot of talking from me. So you've been. You've been working on something cool. You've been working on the Podcast Academy, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Where's that going? What are you working on? Why did you even start working on it in the first place?
Yeah, I felt there was something missing from it. So we've been teaching for 9 years with the podcast hosts. So we've had courses of one form or another for about the last 9 years. We've had communities built in there. We've had forums. We've had live Q&As, all that kind of stuff. So we've had the kind of traditional model of a community for quite a long time. And I've taught for like 20 years. So of one form or another, I know how to create a course and I enjoy making them. The trouble is, like, you can make a course for somebody. You can give them information, knowledge, education, but the thing that always falls down is the implementation. Like so many times we've seen people come into our academy or through the university that I used to teach at, or so it's like, I'm fairly sure it's not just us talking to other people running communities, all that kind of stuff. The problem with education at large is actually putting it into action, making it happen. And so there was something just in the last year or so, I just started to think a lot more about how to refocus our community, how to rebuild it to be based on action, on getting things done, on executing, not just education for the sake of learning something, but making it actually happen. So yeah, that was the big part of it, really. It's like driving it towards that. So education still exists, but the core aim behind it is making things happen. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's weird because I think the reason that it feels like online education courses and stuff is it's all kind of feeling a little bit different than it was maybe in the kind of mid 2010s. It's the sheer number of options that we have, and a lot of it's free, and it's like it's a very different thing having access to education and then having the sort of dedication to go and do it. It's just to make a parallel, the university being free in Scotland is a wonderful thing, right? We like it a lot, but as someone who went to university in Scotland and didn't stay around for very long, it's also not necessarily the best thing for everyone, because if it doesn't cost anything, or if it doesn't, you need to actually do it. Yeah,
you have some skin in the game.
Big gap that would be cool to fill.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally. Yeah, I agree. It's a wonderful thing that we do this, but it does make it so that it's kind of thrown away. People just turn up and they don't really care about it so much because they haven't paid anything for it. So it's when something's free, you don't really put any value on it. But yeah, so yeah, I'm relaunching it this week, essentially. When this show goes out, we should be in the launch week. So I'd love people to check it out, actually. So the big real things to mention are, firstly, accountability. Like I've built in this accountability tool that I mentioned just a minute ago, actually, whereby it's not just post and say, here's my plans. I hope I get this done. And then nobody really follows up. But it's going to be an actual public calendar where you're posting your commitments. And then you can go in and tick off your commitments, and it's personal. So we can see, everyone can see in the community who's been hitting their goals, who's not. And every week, us as a team, we're going to follow up with people that haven't hit their goals. And we're going to be not harsh, not brutal, but we're going to say, like, is there anything we can do to help? What held you up? What actually caused this problem? Yeah.
It's with stuff with content creation, podcasting, it's normally just you that's starting, right? You're not accountable to anyone. And that can be really tough, Probably easier if you've got a co-host or something like that, or, you're doing it with someone else. But yeah, I wish I had something like that a while ago, That's cool. I'm excited for that to go in.
Yeah. And the other side, I think that people always struggle with, it's the consistency is one part. That's the accountability side, getting consistent, getting your work done, getting it out there. The other side is simultaneously knowing that it's any good, like the confidence that you have, like, I don't know if this is any good. Should I be putting this out there? And at the same time, like how to make it better. So how do you constantly improve every single week? And one of the ways to get that is feedback. So you ask for, anyone got any thoughts on whether this is any good? But the trouble with that has always been that it's quite hard to get good feedback unless you're very specific about the questions you're asking. Like people often don't know how to ask for good feedback. And equally, it can take quite a long time. Like if you just send somebody a show, an episode, like it takes a while to listen to it. It takes a long time to give feedback on that. So I'm trying to make it much more focused and systematized, and we call it 4-minute feedback. So you send us 4 minutes of your show, and then we can give you feedback on that specific thing. So maybe you say, right, here's the first 4 minutes of my show, first 4 minutes of my show. Tell me how to make this more engaging so that people listen for longer. My goal is to make people listen to the whole episode. What can I do in the first 4 minutes to make it more likely they'll engage and stick around? So that's a really specific question. And we can give really specific feedback, really specific advice on that exact part of the show based on that. And we can do it quite quickly because it's a small part of the show and it's a very specific question. So we can do that in the outro as well. Like, how do I get more people to sign up to my email list? And you send a segment, which is you asking people to sign up, so we can give advice on that. Or maybe it's like your questioning style. You send a few questions from your interviews, that kind of thing. So I'd quite like to build out like a big database of good questions to ask about your show over time, because I think that's actually a really interesting, useful thing to have. Like, what should I be improving? What should I be asking to be able to get better over time? So that's something. So every member that joins up will have this. They can use it as much as they like. You can send us as many 4-minute clips as you like. We'll get back to you within a couple of days for each one. And use it to improve your show. So on top of that, there's all the sort of standard stuff. We've still got all our 3 flagship blueprints, which are our launch course, our monetization course, our growth course. We've got all of the other stuff like the presentation skills, gear guides. We've got checklists, templates, all that help people save time and all that kind of stuff. And we've got the live stuff too. Like, we've got live support, live workshops. We've got the community conversations, all that stuff. So that's the intent. Yeah, that's kind of the refocus, is around building things that really help people take action. And actually, so being honest about it, we've raised the price by a fair bit as well, because I want to make it a smaller, more intimate community, which charges more, so that we can afford to give much more contact. So I see it as I'm much closer to like one-on-one coaching than the traditional community model. So it's much more like you will actually get a fair bit of contact with us as a team, and much more time from us as a team through both these tools and through the conversations, because it's gone up in price a bit. So it's going to be an annual membership, $17.50 per year, which works out at about $140 per month. So on a monthly basis, it's a lot less than one-to-one coaching, but we're hoping to give a fair part of the experience you would get with one-to-one coaching with it. So that's the kind of, that's the mindset behind it, moving away just from self-serve on a cheap price, which is kind of the common community model, to more a small group coaching with much more kind of systematized tools in there to help facilitate your accountability, your improvement, and all the other things that come with that.
Yeah, that's really exciting. That's cool. And I'm really excited in particular about the 4-minute feedback thing, because every single person that starts a podcast needs feedback. But there's this horrible chicken and egg situation where you have to get listeners first. And it's difficult to get those listeners if you don't have the confidence, or if there's problems with what you're doing. That's really cool. Really cool. And I mean, I'm biased, but I think that's a pretty good deal. It's a pretty good price for what you're getting. You get like async access to the great Colin Gray. That's
well, and you, and Matthew, and Lindsay, and the rest of our community as well. So that's it. It's going to be a team effort from now on. The
full thing.
And that's what I think will add a lot more value to. So if you're out there listening, if you think that'd be useful to you, it's we're mostly podcast focused, but actually I think this is going to much more graduate towards. It's really suited for serious creators. It's suited for creators that want to build a business around their content. And we are certainly podcast first in many ways, but we create video. Our whole business is built around blogging. It's built around video. It's built around email marketing. It's built around all of the different elements. So as soon as you go beyond just a hobbyist in podcasting or video or blogging or whatever, you basically end up doing the whole content gamut. So I think this community is going to be much more focused on the whole ecosystem of content business building. So and certainly we've done really that, so we can help with all of that. Cool. So you can find it. If you do want to check it out, please do go over to thepodcasthost.com/academy. That's thepodcasthost.com/academy. Love you to check it out. All right. We'll jump to the last section.
Let's do it.
One more thing to cover. So just to add to my basics in tools. So I mentioned in a previous episode that I use quite a few little gadgets, little tools that help me so much in productivity. And I just wanted to dig into them a little bit, since I was digging into my mouse and keyboard earlier on. So there's 2 or 3 things specifically that I think should be built into the OS of every computer, really. It's surprising they're not, but certainly whenever I get a new system, I install it like immediately. So is there anything like that for you, Jacob? Like, when you get a new Mac, what's the first couple of things that go on it?
I did a weird thing with this one. I tried to install as little as possible for as long as possible, because I Yeah, I am totally that guy. I will have a list of like 10 things. Yeah, exactly. And I almost wanted to press start, but there's basics. There's always basics like VLC. I always download VLC. Always download Chrome. Always download whatever my favorite text editor is at that time. There's always a coding tool in there. Yeah, there's always a stock list of stuff for productivity that you're used to, that you need to have on there.
Yeah, cool. Well, so my two big, there's a few, but my two big ones that I think are less known. So there's a few obvious ones, like I always install Dropbox. I can't deal without having some kind of file backup and file sharing. So Dropbox there. I install a tool called Snagit, actually, which I'll mention briefly, although I slightly hesitate to because it's a wee bit glitchy. It annoys me quite often, but I still use it all the time because I haven't found an alternative. And it's basically a screen grabber, where you can, we do this a lot. Like we grab apart the screen to show our colleagues what's going on, or to create a tutorial or something like that. So Snagit's the other one. But the two big game changers for me that I found a long time ago now, but I improve them all the time, I think, are, one is called Clip Pro and the other is called AutoHotkey. So I'll dig into both. Like Clip Pro, there's not too much to it apart from the fact that it just gives your copy and paste a memory. So do you have this, Jacob? Because there's loads of different ways to do this. You don't.
Yeah, that's cool.
Why doesn't copy and paste do this normally? You copy something, you paste it in, and then you copy someone else, and then you want to go back and you want to paste old stuff.
Yeah. How many times have you accidentally copied over something that you were like holding in there for like the last 10 minutes or something? So important.
Exactly. Yes. So, absolutely. Yeah. So I'll pop someone up on screen here, but I'll describe it through if you're listening in audio. Don't worry. But Clip Pro is essentially, it gives you superpowers to your copy and paste. So what's on screen just now is so the next tool I'll show you actually, but I can show you how Clip works in this. So if I copy something, so I'm going to copy this line. So I've got a line which is the first line of my address. I've got a line which is the second line of my address. I've got a line that's the third line of my address. And I've copied all of them in sequence. Now, I can go to a different page, and instead of like copying the first thing, then flicking to a different app and then finding the right place and then copying it in and then flicking back to the other app and then going back again and back and forth. Instead now I can just click Control Shift and V as opposed to Control V, and I get a full thing that pops up on my screen. Can you see that there, Jacob?
No, I can't actually.
Oh, okay. See, so this isn't actually in the window. It's part of the OS. So it's not showing up. But what is showing on my screen is when I click Control Shift, Clip pops up with a little list of the last 10 things that I've copied and pasted. And actually, I can go back further if I scroll as well. So I can go down, I can click the second last thing, and it pastes in the second last thing. And then I can click Control Shift again. I can click the third last thing, and I can copy that in as well. And I just find this so useful. I use it like dozens of times a day, where I have to go back and copy something that I've copied, paste something that I've copied a while back. So Clip Pro is the first one. Just gives your copy and paste a memory. No, it does not. Does it? No,
the Pro's throwing me.
Well, you're absolutely. That is what just made. I was about to say no, and then suddenly I thought, did I pay for this once?
Has this been like a lifetime deal 10 years ago or something that you got?
Possibly. Let me Clip Pro. So Clipboard Manager. So there is free download. It just says free download. So I think it is actually totally free. And I've never seen it. So this is probably PC only, but I know for a fact there's Mac versions of this as well. You'll be able to get something. And you don't even need to use Clip Pro. It's the one I like, but there's plenty of alternatives.
Do you want to know my workaround for that situation? See, for address in particular, what I do is I copy it. And I do this for all sorts of things, but I paste it into the address bar, and I just copy and paste it bit by bit. Another really handy thing for the address bar is when you copy text from somewhere, like that's formatted. If you paste it into the text bar, it removes the formatting. And if you copy it out again of the address bar, it's without formatting, and you don't get any of the weird issues. All sorts of issues trying to paste things into blogs and stuff. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I do that. I use Notepad for that. Like PC has Notepad built in. It's just basic text. So anything that has formatting, I paste it in there first, and then copy again, and then paste it into the blog. Yeah, removes all the nonsense. Yeah, that's a good tip though. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, second one, no, this is the real time saver. So Clip Pro does save me a lot of time, but the other one, the one I can't live without at all, is Auto Hotkey. So in its basic form, it's just a text expander. Now, a text expander just means if I type in 1 or 2 characters, it replaces it with something longer. So the example I've got on my screen here is I use it for the most common use for me is emails. Like, how many times do you type in your email per day into a website?
Far too many.
Somewhere, far too many times. So I've got shortcuts for all of my emails. So if I type in, so here's an example. I'm not going to use a real email here, but if I type in ME and then press space, it just expands out into that email. And I've got that for all of my emails. So I use like 5, 10 different emails, and I can do it for all that. And the other most common is you're on a website and you have to register your address. You're buying something. So you're in there and you're typing out your whole address every single time. But instead, all I do is I type in A1 and press space. I'll do B1 as the fake one here, B2, B3, B4. And then I've just typed out my whole address there in like seconds. And that makes that speeds things up so much. The thing is, so that's the most basic use. You don't use them that often, but it still saves you a lot of time.
Yeah.
But there's so many things I've expanded into using this for over time. Social media links is a big one. So I have to type these into forms all the time. If you're appearing on podcasts and things like that, people always ask like, oh, give me your Twitter link, your LinkedIn link, all that. And then you have to go and load up because you can't remember these things. So you go and load up the website, you have to copy it, then you go, and it just takes ages. Whereas I have shortcuts where all I do is I type in U for URL and LI for LinkedIn. So ULI is the URL for my LinkedIn profile.
Nice.
UTW is the URL for my Twitter profile. UYT for YouTube. UIN for Instagram. And that's all expanding out on screen as I type it. And I use them a lot as well. Beyond that, so like calendar links, I use that all the time. Like I'm writing an email and somebody, we want to set up a meeting. So all I do is I type in URL, cal, and that expands out into the link, which is towards my booking app. So book like a boss. So it opens up my booking page so that people can book an appointment with me. And that makes, that's just a URL that I use all the time. So that's really easy to do as well. So stuff like that. Like, does that inspire any ideas, Jacob? Anything you'd use that for beyond what I've said?
Can I be completely honest?
Yeah.
Can I? Right. The whole time I spent, you were talking there, I was in my head thinking, but why would you not just use that? Right. So let's go through this, right? So go back up to the top for me.
Uh-huh.
Right. So your address. Do you not use autocomplete? Like built into the browser or 1Password or? So
I have tried that. I've just found it quirky for some reason. You're right. You can do that with 1Password, LastPass, and the like for addresses, emails particularly. Yeah. So you're right. You can use them for them. I have found this just quicker because you end up, it pops up. I'm maybe not logged into LastPass or 1Pass or whatever. So I do, and that's fine. So then you're logged in, but then you have to choose the right one because you've got work addresses, you've got office addresses. So I've got 3 different addresses I use because we've got the registered office, we've got my office here, and I've got my home address. So there's things like that. And I know you can set up different profiles, but then you end up selecting between them all. So I've just found it quicker and easier over time to be able to remember the shortcuts. And I think
you're totally right on this, by the way. I think you are, because it never works. The quirks that you're talking about are the most frustrating thing in the world, because it'll put for no apparent reason on just like website to website, it'll put the town in the postcode, and it'll put the postcode in the second line of the address, and it's like this is useless, completely useless. To spend more time autofilling,
fixing it.
No, this is good. Is there anything that you've not said here that you're using it for? What's like the weirdest thing that you use it for?
Oh, so one, I'll show you a couple of there's a few others. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll show you a few cool things because it does a lot more stuff. Sorry, I'm not even close to finished here. Right. So one that I use it for that probably not many people do. I'm an emoji fanatic. So I use it for emojis. So I don't use this one so much anymore, Jacob, because you react badly to it. but I've got a shortcut for thumbs up.
A whole generation reacts badly to the sarcastic thumbs up.
I just don't see it as sarcastic. It's not sarcastic. It's a genuine, yeah, cool, thumbs up to me. Anyway, I can use it for that. I can use it for thumbs down. I can, like, some of the emojis I use quite a lot, like the squint one. I use that a lot. So I've got a shortcut for that. For those, I've got a dot and an SQ. So I just type that in and it expands out to it. And it saves me having to select it from the tools and all that kind of stuff. So that's one. There's a few, so hard to remember stuff actually as well. So we use a tool on our blog called Ad Rotate. Well, we do have it active right now for a few different reasons. And it has shortcodes for different adverts. So I've set up, but I can never remember the shortcodes. So I've set up a shortcut that I can remember for that shortcode. So I just have to type in ad code and it adds in the shortcode instead.
That's
and
cool.
It expands to that.
Yeah, I can get on board with that.
So stuff like that, even like ridiculous stuff like we have good security on our website. Obviously we need it there, but it means that I get blocked out of our website whenever my IP address changes. And I never remember my IP address. So actually, I have to do this. No, it's not even when it changes because I have coded in my IP address into a shortcut because I won't remember that off the top of my head. And I have to re-add it all the time. I don't know why. It just forgets me or something. But anyway, that's just something I have to use a lot. My headshot. So like when you're doing podcast interviews, people ask for a photo all the time.
That's smart.
So I've got a Dropbox link to my headshot, and all I type in is uhead into my email, and it pops in the URL directly. And then bigger things like my biography. I get asked for that quite often for podcast interviews, so I just type in .bio. That expands out into my full bio. Scheduling meetings quite often. So I say, do you fancy? All I type in is .sched. CSCHED, and it expands into, do you fancy picking out a time that suits you from here? Enter. Like you can do a line return. The URL for my calendar, enter. Let me know if there's nothing that suits your schedule and we can figure something out. And so really I can type that into any email in the space of 5 characters.
Is there like a limit on how much you can put in it? Or like
I've not found it yet. I've never found it. Yeah.
That's
it
cool.
Can go quite big. Yeah. So yeah, there's just so many things that you type. Anything you type more than once, like anything that's non-unique, anything you use fairly often. Like the end of my emails, cheers, enter, Colin. I've got that as just .ch. So anytime I'm writing an email, I just type .ch at the end of the email and it types in for me, cheers, Colin. And that's it.
All this time, all these years, I thought you were actually saying cheers to me, and it was all generated.
I was completely false. I was completely didn't have any meaning behind it, Jacob. So there's all these things, and I know it's like literal. It's probably just 2 or 3 or 4 seconds each time, but it so adds up, and it so makes my life easier and quicker.
It must feel better than it. It must feel better to use and more satisfying to use, and like you're ungummed from having to go and copy and paste something more than it actually saves you the time. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It makes you feel like you're being productive, and that can be helpful. Not having to context switch.
Right.
And
there's a satisfaction to it as well. Yeah, exactly. Just kind of a sense of well-being.
Yeah, and this must be years of building up these shortcuts as well. Like no one's going to download it and set all these up or know where to set them all up. But once you've got it, it seems like the kind of thing, once you've got it and you start using it a little bit for like a couple of things, I mean, you kind of see this here with you showing us, you're just like, oh, I should add this and I should add that. There's all sorts of things. Hey, let's go.
Yeah. Final one, and this is one I don't use very often, but you can create macros in it as well. So you can code. So one thing I was doing recently was copying, you know this, Jacob, because you helped me out with it. We were copying, and we've done this too many times, copying courses from one platform to another, because we've shifted community spaces, all that kind of stuff quite often. And I actually coded in a copy and paste macro to copy from one platform to another at one point. It took me like an hour to do. But and I probably
sure felt productive.
And I probably could have done that particular task in that amount of time, but it felt so much more interesting and fun to make it than to do it.
Yeah, but that's
actually,
important as well.
Yeah, but actually, no, it has saved me a lot of time as well, being able to do this. Like, you can code it so that it does move the mouse to this coordinate on screen, and then you can say click on that bit on screen, and then move to another place and click there, and then move to another place and click there. So you can make it take actions and move the screen around and scroll, and then flick to another screen and then copy and paste in. So what this one does on my screen in front of me just now is it clicks on something it was copying video lessons. So it clicked to open the video settings. It copied the URL for the video, which is a Vimeo video. It flicked to the new platform. It opened up the video URL there, and it pasted it in. And it did that as soon as I clicked a little shortcut. And I actually put that onto my Stream Deck as well. So I had a button on my Stream Deck where I would just open up the right page, and I would press the button, and then it would do the whole thing. And then I would just open up the next lesson. The one thing I couldn't get it to do accurately was to move between lessons. So I just sat there going, next lesson, click, next lesson, click, next lesson, click. That was my that was my macro.
Yeah.
So
that's pretty good.
I've seen some really interesting uses of this around the web over the years. So yeah, there's tons of stuff you can do that with that. But there's whole guides to using AutoHotkey in all sorts of weird and wonderful ways.
Very, very cool.
Yes. So those are the two.
I like it. I'm gonna try at least one of them, and I'll report back.
Cool. Perfect. All right. Sounds good. All right. That's it for me. Sweet, Jacob. How about you?
I need to go and build more stuff, so that's it for me too.
Perhaps.
No, I actually need to send emails now.
Right, we've got an ask for the listener though. We've set up a new space, a community for the podcast in our IndiePod community. It's actually the same space that the Academy I mentioned before is in as well. So our premium community is in this same overall space. But what I've done is set up a private space. That doesn't describe it very well. A private little place for you to interact with us and other listeners of this show. And the primary goal really is for us to get feedback from you guys to improve the show, to get questions for the show, to get guidance on what topics to cover, to get questions from anyone who's watching or listening to these episodes that we can then cover in future, and basically make it better over time, and have a place for you to see news about new episodes coming out, for us to, get feedback from you on what to include, all that kind of stuff. So it'd be really great to see anyone in there that's out there listening, out there watching, in there, so that we can say thanks for watching, for listening. We can answer your questions, we can chat to you, and we can improve the show over time. So you can find that over at thepodcasthost.com/creator community. So that's thepodcasthost.com/creator community. And that'll pop you into the sign up page. That'll take you straight into that space within our wider IndiePod community. And the IndiePod community might be interesting to you as well. There's tons of great creators in there, primarily podcasting focused, but lots of people doing video, blogging, all the other stuff as well. So yeah, it'd be great to see you there. That's thepodcasthost.com/creator community. And that's my first question for you, specifically in there, talking about good specific calls to action. If you pop in there and sign up, please answer the question. I'll post it in there actually ahead of time. So I'll post it. By the time you get there, it'll be there. It'll be, do you like the current format of the show? That's what I'm curious about. Do you like the fact that we cover 4, 5 different things, sometimes non-related, on the episodes? Or do you like it when we have sometimes stuck to just one topic or one thing and gone really in depth on an episode? So that's a curious thing I'm curious about just now, is whether we're this kind of variety show format, or whether actually we want to pick one thing and go deeper on it. So yeah, please do answer that. If you're out there listening, we'd love to get your feedback on that. Pop over to thepodcasthost.com/creator community, and we'll see you there. All right.
Don't do the homework and just come and hang out. That's fine too.
That's it. Yeah, totally. Cool. All right. Cheers, Jacob. I'll speak to you next week. And out there listening,
cheers.
Have a good week in creating. Cheers.
Bye.